anything that I've done that's worked out, I've tied it back to being super uncomfortable and scared when I first started, yet doing it anyways. If you want to build any business, of course you do have to focus on revenue. That's the lifeblood of business. But if you can find a way to do it for a long enough period of time, you will find a way to turn that idea into revenue. How do you win at anything? You just have to stay in the game long enough. Yeah. That's it.
Hi, I'm Moshe Popak and welcome to Common Denominator. Today we speak with Scott Clary. Scott is the host of the Success Story podcast, where he has candid conversations with some of the most prolific business and thought leaders in the world. The podcast ranks as a top 10 business podcast, a top 3 education and self-development podcast, has over 600 episodes and over 30 million downloads. It's a fun chat, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Hi, Scott, and welcome to Common Denominator.
Thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate you.
So I know that many guests that we have, they have their podcast as kind of like a side thing, but 600 episodes in on Success Story, and that's the thing that you do.
That's the main thing.
That's the main thing. So take us back to the original, like, in other words, why you started it, and looking back now, what is kind of like, reflecting on it, what are the kind of key takeaways that you have?
So the reason I started it, I think, is a little bit different than why most people start it. I think people start it because they want to use it as a tool to help build the business they already have. When I started my podcast, I always have had this idea of how do I future-proof myself? So how do I, and we can talk about AI, because I think a lot of people try and figure out how to use that to future-proof their business or how to understand it. But I always think about what's the thing I can do now that will continue, that will help me still be relevant in 5 or 10 years. And at the time, we were building a software company that was eventually acquired, and how the acquisition took place is the company that acquired us, Grass Valley, they had basically been working with us for about a year before they actually pulled the trigger. So we knew that the acquisition was coming. We knew our revenues. We knew what that acquisition would look like. And I'm not an idiot. I know that this is not going to be like a windfall that's never going to, that's going to allow me to never work again. So for me, I was thinking, okay, this is going to happen. This transaction is going to happen. What is going to happen next in my life and my career? And I was really tired of basically starting from scratch again and again and again, which is fine. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to future-proof myself, my name, my own personal brand. And I'm a marketer. So even though I've worked in tech, I've always been on the marketing sales side. So I study the Seth Godins and the Gary V's and now the Alex Hormozis and all the other, I've studied all of them. And I saw what Gary V did, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he did a really good job of building out a personal brand that future-proofed himself, not just so that he was a successful entrepreneur with his main company, but then he would launch companies against that audience and against his personal brand repeatedly. This is what he did with his NFT project, even though it didn't do so well. Empathy Wines, Vayner Sports. He has another media brand called 1 PM or something like that. But the point is, he has this massive audience that he's built over X amount of years, and now he can launch companies against that audience. So in my mind, I'm like, well, whatever I do in the future, why not build an audience before I need them? Why not build an audience that eventually, if I want to start a new company, I can do that. If I want to do coaching and consulting, don't love it, but why not? I have an audience there that could be customers. If I want to get a job, well, what if I come with an audience built in? So it was just future-proofing. That's really all it was. It was future-proofing. So start now, continue that, and I'm also a big believer that maybe it's a little bit of delusion, but I'm a believer that if someone else has done it, they're not that special. I'll figure it out. And that's sort of been how I've succeeded my entire career. I'll jump into shit before I'm ready. I'll figure it out. Building an audience is no different. If you start and you're a smart person and you figure out what's working and what's not, over the course of X amount of years, you'll find a way to build that audience. So I'm like, listen, at the time, I'm young, Start now, why not? And see what comes of it. And if I can stay in the game long enough, then in my mind, it's impossible not to win. I truly believe that as well.
That's actually the model. First of all, I love the confidence, which is true, which is that if you're going to be in business, you have to have that sense of confidence. I always say a line item or 100% fact is there will be failures. You'll have you'll have many, many rejections. Mm-hmm. So your job is just to be calm, super, super calm. And no doesn't even mean no.
Yeah.
No is that person's life that's going on, and you happen to be coming to that person at the wrong time. It's just time, right? You're coming to them at the wrong time. So you just kind of come to them with a different idea or a different way, right?
Exactly.
And I've seen it so many times. No, yes. And then it happens. But time, the consistency and the time is actually what ends up happening. But and I also appreciate they talk about a lot of investing in yourself, right? So it's like, spending the time to invest in yourself, to build that brand, more important than anybody else. And I've seen that, right? Like you say, you're talking about like Gary Vee and Alex Hormozi. So what are they doing? They're creating actually, what do people buy? They buy an emotion. Yeah. If they have a positive feeling, right? I'm not a marketing guy, but I know it's like, Ferrari,
you are,
right?
You are.
But maybe I am, right? But I just think what works, what are the good feelings? People, it's the first 3 seconds. That's how you feel, right? Yeah. So if you create a brand and keep reinvesting in yourself, right? Then
you build that community,
dividends.
You build that trust, you build that positive rapport with the audience. So at the time I was like, listen, I'm going to start it now. I don't know what I'll use it for. It's important to me. The things that are important to me is that it has some utility in the future. I enjoy it enough. And if it has utility in the future for me and I enjoy it enough, then I can stick with it long enough for it to be successful. And that was at a very high level why I started the podcast. It was fun for me. I knew it had utility.
That's right. So the macro, that's also as an entrepreneur, right? So everybody has what I've seen, like their business plan. But what actually happens in the business plan,
100%.
Right? It's completely night and day.
Yeah.
But as long as you have the general idea, and I always like to focus on the numbers, right? Because if you don't have fuel, I think of the net income or the profit. Yeah. If you don't have that, you can't pay your bills. 100%. And therefore things shut down. So if you focus on that and your general macro perspective, then it seems like eventually
it'll work. And you do have to focus on both. You can't just say I'm doing a passion project and not figure out how to drive revenue. I think that the gap between the two, the passion and the revenue, would be, okay, the passion project, any passion project, any hobby can turn into a business. You just have to find the KPIs or the leading indicators that are indicative of eventual revenue. So for me, I'm going to start this. Yeah. How do I grow it? How do I increase my downloads, my subscribers, my viewers, my followers, my listens, whatever metric you want to track, and over time you'll figure out what that metric is. And then how do we tie revenue back to that? Now, I also said that when I started it, I didn't know the exact business model around podcasting, and there's many different business models. But that was okay for me at the beginning. I was in a very privileged position to not worry too much about the immediate business model. Not to say that that's a smart play, but I do think that if people can find, the lesson here is that if you want to build a business, let's take the lesson from my story. If you want to build any business, of course you do have to focus on revenue. That's the lifeblood of business. But if you can find a way to do it for a long enough period of time, you will find a way to turn that idea into revenue. The version of entrepreneurship that I hate is when you quit your job and you have 3 months of money in the bank account and you are rushing to make it work. That's why I like anybody who asks, should I start a business? Yeah, go for it. But don't quit your 9 to 5 yet. Figure out how to make it work. Figure out how to test things where you're not going to miss a mortgage payment or a rent payment or not be able to put food on the table. Because when you operate in that environment where you're able to continue testing, indefinitely, you're going to find a way to make that thing eventually work. And the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is that you only have to have one thing actually become successful to have a radically different life than what you ever would have imagined or dreamed, right? If only one thing ever works.
Right, and it was interesting that you mentioned that because I've said this a couple times in the show, it's like, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Like every day, and I'm sure the listeners understand this, right? There, all these crazy ideas, let me invest, and we'll talk a little bit about AI or different things that people want to do, but in the end of the day, it's one thing, do it extremely well.
Yeah.
No matter how you feel, you show up to it.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. Oh, he's the window washing guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That's the guy. Happens to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But that's actually how it's done, right?
Yeah.
He's a master. So people have
find
to
a way to stay in that game, that window washing game. Find a way to do it for 15 years. You know what first opened my eyes to this? I told you I'm from Toronto, and there was two guys in Toronto, and they were like parents of friends at the time. And they had the biggest houses, like the big. I mean, you don't get houses like this in Miami. Like these are like mansions. When like when you go to you look at like the Texas mansions or the Ohio mansions, and they're like just insane, right?
It's always one guy, right?
Yeah,
high up on the hill. Right?
In Miami, I don't even think you can get land. I don't even get that much land in Miami.
Yeah.
But these guys, it was like acres and acres and acres, and just and you're curious what they do. And one of the guys who had one of these styles of homes, it was just ridiculous, not even considered a home at this point, he installed the glass on new home builds. He just did glass. And the other guy, he did paper. He did he's the guy that would sell the paper. I don't know the supply chain. I don't know how he did it. He'd been doing it for 25 years. He would sell the paper that you would eventually buy that would stick in your printer. How boring are these businesses? No, they're not sexy businesses, but they were in the game for so long.
Yeah.
That it was, and I can't remember what the numbers were, but he was like something like, oh, we supply 5% of the paper in North America. And the guy is loaded.
It's funny, you remind me, must have been, I don't know, 10 years old, and I used to play down the block. All the kids would go on Saturday and play by our neighbor's house, play basketball. And the guy had this full court basketball court, huge, right? He was the guy in the neighborhood. Yeah. And one time after the game, I went and I asked him, I was like, by the way, what do you do? And I'm a kid, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, listen, I'll tell you, kid, but you can't tell anybody. So he has the contracts to clean the toilets on the planes. He's like, JFK Airport, all the planes that land?
Yeah.
He's like, that's what I do. And you see how many planes land? That's crazy. That's my story. And I see it over and over. People I meet, first of all, and the real guys, super quiet.
Yeah, I know.
Super quiet. They're in the back, not saying anything, right? That's always what it happens to be.
They've been doing it for 30 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And nowadays, so what do we tell young guys that want to, right? We're seeing that all over social media, and I talked a lot on the show about it. Maybe you have some ideas, some hacks that they're seeing all the guys with all the fancy cars and partying and everything that's going on for the youth. Maybe some ideas that they don't have to, they can slow down.
They should slow down. I think a couple ideas around this. First of all, I think the business that I'm building as a podcaster, it's a stupid business to get into. Why is that? Because it's a vanity business. It's sexy. It's exciting. What does that mean? That attracts a lot of competition. Scott Galloway speaks about this a lot. He speaks about if you're going to try and make a lot of money, don't build a vanity business. Don't build something that's fun and exciting. So podcasting is like the peak vanity business, because literally you're just on air, bringing on cool guests. You're trying to everybody wants to do it.
Yeah.
But if you do something like you want to find a way to clean toilets in a commercial capacity, you probably don't start off there. You probably start off doing it yourself, and you build a business around it. Paper, glass for new home development. These are not sexy vanity businesses. Even if you think about where to pursue a career, what's easier? To make a lot of money as an employee or a founder of an AI company when everyone's building AI companies, or just go into some really boring type of law. Think about who makes money in acting or sports or podcasting. It's like the 0.01%.
Stats, real
right?
Numbers, yeah.
If you look at not just the 0.01%, but the top 10% of people that own landscaping businesses, or top 10% of people that own toilet cleaning businesses, or top 10% of people that are personal injury attorneys. They're all flying private. They're all making so much money. But the top 10% of podcasters, they probably can barely afford rent.
Yeah, that's a real number.
Vanity versus non-vanity business.
I want to tell you something. My son was telling me, my two boys have got into the vending machine business.
Yeah.
Right? Simple, because I wanted them to understand, again, that income expense and the QuickBooks. And simple, but what do they do? So they finished high school and college, my older one online, and they went back to their old high school where they actually have machines.
Yeah.
And he would tell me that the kids are sitting there pointing fingers, ha, 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 look at what you're doing. And meanwhile, they have 40 locations now. And, they're making 20,000 plus.
Yeah.
Well, he's 18 and 17, my two boys.
Insane.
And they're doing,
yeah.
Right. I mean, right. Boring. They're filling up the chips and the drinks.
Yeah.
But to your point, they did it from nothing. I didn't help them. I said, you got to go and you got to do this. And you have to not care what anybody says.
Yeah.
If the numbers are working and it's paying your bills and it's real, unlike podcasts. But I want to tell you something else also. You mentioned about everything has to go down to the revenue. We also have a not-for-profit. It's called Neighborhood Farms USA. So we put gardens in our workforce housing communities.
Yeah.
So, to teach the kids about healthy eating. Even there, I tell everybody, for-profit, not-for-profit, everything has to have the KPIs and has to make sense.
Yeah.
So you can't just be like, all over the place. Everything has to make sense. But tell me, what's your memory? Because now it's 600 episodes later.
Yeah.
Right? What's your memory of that? You started and that first episode.
Confidence is very important. Confidence is extremely important in business. And if you don't have any, you have to find a way to go get some. You have to find a way to track how you've been successful before and use that confidence to push you forward. Why is it important? Because in the first few episodes, I was shooting way out of my league. I was emailing, and I'll tell you, like in the first few episodes, I had Guy Kawasaki, I had Anthony Scaramucci, I had Grant Cardone. These are guys that, candidly, I was scared shitless, but I just cold emailed and some of them said yes. So I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to interview these guys now. So the first few episodes, I was horrified, and I've always, again, I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm just going to reiterate, anything that I've done that's worked out, I've tied it back to being super uncomfortable and scared shitless when I first started, yet doing it anyways. And when I cold emailed those guys and I asked them to come on, like I was, again, very nervous. And I'm like, you know what? This is probably a sign that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And I don't think I knew that at the time, or I didn't have as clear an idea of how important that concept is, but that idea has repeatedly shown itself to be true in my career. Anytime I lean into something that really truly scares me, on the other side of it, it always ends up working out better than I think it will. And it's a really good indicator that I'm doing work that a lot of other people don't feel comfortable doing, which I think is a competitive advantage. So if I'm trying to invest in a company, raise money, cold call a customer, reach out to a guest for a podcast, go on stage, I just don't delay, and I sort of rush into it head first, and it's super scary. And on the other side of it, it works out. And then I'm like, thank God I did that. And that's sort of an indicator for me that I'm on the right path.
I find that as well, the greatest results happen in that space.
Yes.
It's something with the universe. Why? Because it's like, okay, why would someone invest with you or do, or buy your product or do something with you?
Yeah.
Unless there is a value. So the value proposition happens when you're delivering to them something that because humans seem to be naturally lazy, right?
Yes.
So if you're delivering to them something that was really scary to you, and if you're self-aware, then it's probably scary for them.
Yeah.
but here you are.
Yeah.
Here it is. Here's the price. Sure, I'll pay for it.
Yeah.
So it has to be, if you want to be super successful, it has to be that every day you're stepping into pushing the boundaries. Oh, okay, I settled my extremities and
Yeah.
I'm calm with this. So you know what you do? You go to the next thing and you figure out how to be calm while the chaos.
Because that's where the opportunity is. I mean, the feelings that you feel when you jump into something new, everyone else feels them. The difference is that probably the majority of people choose to not go through because it's super uncomfortable. And then once you almost codify this concept into your work ethic, you're like, okay, so if I'm going to be successful, let me look for the scariest thing I can possibly do. Then all of a sudden it becomes part of your process. So I was not so aware of this back when I first started my podcast, but with the podcast comes a little bit of fame and notoriety, and then speaking opportunities start to pop up. And speaking is like the number one fear that anybody has. And what did I do to become better at speaking? I purposefully booked as many speaking engagements as I possibly could go to, and I did it in like South Florida. So someone had a mastermind, someone had like a networking event, someone had a small stage with 10 entrepreneurs. I'd be like, hey, give me like 15 minutes because I just want to, through exposure, put myself in front of audiences as much as possible. And then after doing that 30, 40, 50 times, all of a sudden you're not so nervous about speaking anymore.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's everything.
Because I look back at maybe again, that first 30, 40 episodes of the podcast,
Yeah.
and now we're 200 episodes in.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a conversation with Scott.
Yeah.
It's
easy now.
It's a little.
It's just exposure.
It's a little bit different. But I've come across so many. I know you had an exit with your tech company. So many people, and kudos to you because you thought about, okay, what's actually going to happen?
Yeah.
And, okay, maybe I'll get this amount of cash, I'll pay the government, but what's my next iteration? So many people, it could be 2 months later, 6 months, a year later, they didn't think about, first of all the emotions, because you have to be stable and ready for abundance. Like, okay, fine, you're running, you make it, right? Several of millions or whatever it is, you get your exit, oh, this is what I work for. They're not thinking about friends, family, wife, kids, life, holistically, and I see that could lead, right? So if you're not grounded, right, what happens on the other side of that big exit? And I've seen, unfortunately, some not good stuff on that.
I see that a lot too, because I interview entrepreneurs that have had huge, enormous exits, much bigger, much bigger, right? And I think that just having a little bit of foresight into what your future is going to look like is healthy. Because, and listen, I was never in a position where I never had to work again, but I know some people that are in that position. And if they don't give it a little bit of thought, they start to wander aimlessly. And then they start to lose meaning in their life. And they start to get a little bit depressed, but then they can't talk to anyone about it because if you look them up in the news, they had $100 million exit. So now they have no meaning and they have no fulfillment. And sometimes they've basically built their business without thinking about their family or their wife or their spouse, who after years of building their business, sometimes are not even around anymore because they've only focused on building their business. And now you have money, everybody wants some of it, and you don't know what you're doing anymore because you've been so heads down on building your business for such a long period of time, you don't actually know how to operate in this world without building. And that creates depression and anxiety. And how do I not screw this up? And not everybody goes through this, but enough do. And they don't talk about it publicly because they just get ripped on. What do you mean? How can you complain about your life now? But the point is not that they haven't been successful. The point is that regardless of whatever level of success you achieve or whatever milestone that you're going to accomplish in your life and your business, like just think about, okay, that's great, but that's not my identity. Let me figure out what my identity looks like on the other side of this. And also let me figure out maybe on the way to building that thing, I should be careful about not losing the other aspects of my life, like my relationships, like my spouse. How many people make a lot of money and are divorced? Maybe I shouldn't lose that. Maybe I should care about my physical health and go to the gym on the way to building my company so that on the other side of it, I still have a fulfilled life and I haven't lost everything just because of this exit.
So I think a lot about meaning and purpose and fulfillment. For what would you say? Because I've come across many people, also super successful people, and they confide in me, and it's true. It's true. There's depression. There's this. That I'm about to go through a divorce. I'm about to. Those things are real because everyone's a human.
Yeah.
It's real stuff. No matter how much money you have, it's irrelevant. If someone, they hear it in the abstract, find meaning and purpose, what would you say actual tips to do that?
So for me, I think that we as a society have focused on milestone achievement. I think that we focus on, in anything in life, we focus on, okay, I'm on my weight loss journey. How do I look like a GQ model? I'm in this relationship. Okay, I'm so excited for the wedding. And then after that, it's just routine and it's boring. I'm past the honeymoon phase. Oh, I'm building a business. I'm so excited for the exit. We focus on all these milestones, and it's very cliche, but we actually do not enjoy the journey. So when we focus on milestones, we train ourselves to hate every day because they're not the milestone. So my solution, and what I like to do, and I don't know if this works for everyone, I think it's a good idea, is every single day we have the opportunity to do the things that will make our life fulfilled, meaning we spend time with our partner, or we have good conversations with people that we care about. We do some sort of activity or movement. Physical fitness is super important, not just for our long-term health, but even the hormonal response if you go for a run or if you go to the gym and lift weights. And then we also do meaningful work that pushes us towards our goal. I think the issue is when we sacrifice our personal relationships, our physical health, and our mental health in pursuit of a milestone, which means that all we do is we do the work and we don't do any of the other stuff that's fulfilling. So I think that a more balanced day in pursuit of the end goal will mean that our life in general is more fulfilling, and on the other side of that end goal we still have a fulfilling life because we have spread all of these things that matter to us across every single day of the week so that we don't just work nonstop. That's what I think. I believe that that's probably one of the most important ideas. And it's not a novel idea, but I don't think, listen, a lot of people listen to our shows, yours and mine. They're all very high performing people. And I have heard many people that are probably in our friend group say, I never had a chance to go to the gym when I was building. How could I ever think about taking time off? Or, I didn't really put as much energy into my relationship as I should have. And the argument is, if you look at Mark Randolph, who's the co-founder of Netflix, tells this story often about how every Tuesday he would go on date night with his wife. He'd shut off at 5 o'clock. It doesn't matter what fires are going on in Netflix. He would shut off and he'd go on date night with his wife. It was a non-negotiable. So if somebody like that can block out time for relationship, which is one of those meaningful components, then you can too, because you're probably not building Netflix. You're probably building something much smaller. And even if you are, he's a role model you should look up to. So the point is that every single day, give yourself space for these other things that are important. Because another idea that ties into this is that work expands to the space that you give it. I believe that to be fully true. And if you block off time for fitness, if you block off time for relationship with your friends or your spouse, and you concentrate on work when you're actually working, I believe that you will get just as much work done, and you will focus on the things that actually move the needle as opposed to just doing things to feel busy. And that's how I think you structure your day, so that you have fulfillment along the journey, not just you get some dopamine hit when you hit that milestone.
So I definitely can see that, because imagine you've given yourself these other parts, relationships, and you've gone to the gym. The version of yourself that you put in, imagine it's just low energy and high energy.
Yeah.
That's what we are, right? So if you put in super focused, high energy, because you've gone to the gym, you've done the cold plunge, sauna, whatever you're doing, and this is what it is, and I got to hit this. You're super focused, and you're getting it done. Because I do know, I know you talk a lot about hustle culture, and I have my opinion about it. And what's your? Because it's becoming very popular, and I'm a huge fan, just like you, of balance, and I've seen balance over a long period of time. Because anyhow, everything takes a long period of time, and you live once.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do? I tell this to my wife like years ago, and my kids. I was like, listen, it's either it's going to suck, be terrible, and what? And then that's the end of your life? No. The only way is to be intentional.
Yeah.
Right? Be intentional. Find the positive things in each day.
Yeah.
And focus on that. It's not, this amount of money, that, like, again, those dopamine hits. You have to find them. Oh, wow, I just got a nice piece of, candy bar or something.
100%.
Something nice, right? Just something small that each day will do that. But I just want to see.
Can I give you two more quick examples?
Please.
The reason why I give examples is because somebody can say, oh, that's easy for you to say. How do you know it works? How do you know it works? And I don't, any ideas that I believe, I don't just believe them. There's reasons why I believe them. So I mentioned one reason was Mark Randolph, who's a co-founder of Netflix. Two more reasons are two of my closest friends. And they've told these stories before, so I don't mind repeating them. One of them is Joseph Martin, who is the founder of BoxyCharm. And he said that he had done such a good job of delegating the task that he was responsible for. And by the way, he sold BoxyCharm for $500 million. Successful entrepreneur. He was so good at delegating and giving people the work they should do and taking things off his plate and only focusing on the urgent and important. Closest to when he was about to sell, he would find himself with hours of free time in the afternoon. He's like, I've taken naps before, right before we sold in the middle of the afternoon, because I was so good at prioritizing what actually only I could do and delegating everything else. And he wasn't a lazy guy.
True. Yeah.
Another friend, Leo Pareja, he's the CEO of EXP. It's a $4 billion publicly traded company. We always talk, because I don't have kids yet, and I want kids, and he has kids, and we always go back and forth. And he's like, Scott, have kids. And I'm like, I don't know if I have time. Right? That's the argument.
Yeah.
And he's like, Scott, when I had kids, I became such a better entrepreneur because I was forced not to do the BS. I was forced to work on the things, because if I worked on the BS that was kind of just fun, busy work, I wouldn't have time for my kids. So now he is the most devoted, present father, and he's running a $4 billion publicly traded company because he knows what he has to work on, and he can't afford to work on the other stuff. So prioritize. Anyway, sorry, what was your question?
No. So I just want to say, just on your point, I don't know if you know, so I have 11 children. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know.
So now we're here on the show live. Here we are. I can for sure relate to each child. First of all, they give you blessings. Each child, they're creative in their nature. The children are right. Yeah. Us adults don't know what we're talking about,
100%.
actually, because we're too in the establishment. They have the ability to see to the future. Yeah. And I chose now almost 10 years ago, my wife and I, we work together, but I work from home. I have a home office. Yeah. There are times with 3-4 kids, and I'm in the middle of a super important meeting, but that's just the story. Yeah. That's the story. And they get to see, now my oldest is almost 19, so he's seeing business, he's involved in the business. But yes, I'm a big proponent of having as many kids as you can have. Yeah. Right? It'll challenge you. I get tested all the time. You get tested patience. You learn a lot. Yeah. But it definitely is there. But just going back to the idea of, we were talking about just before about hustle culture, what your take on that is. So
I'm not a fan of hustle culture. I'm not a fan of build at all costs and destroy the rest of your life. I am a fan of balance. I do believe that when you're younger, it's okay to have a season of imbalance to find out what you want to do. I don't think that's an issue. I think the biggest issue with hustle culture is it perpetuates this myth that you have to forget everything else in your life for your entire life. And you have to build at all costs, and you have to have $100 million exit, and you have to wake up at 3 a.m. That is all BS. It's all garbage. You can work hard when you're young, and you can figure out what you want to do. And I think taking risks is important for a season of your life as well. But I really do believe that you have to find a flow and a daily cadence that works for you. And I think that the daily cadence that we've alluded to and we've spoken about, where you incorporate all these different parts of what makes a fulfilling life, I think that's a much more healthy and long-term and sustainable way to live. And keep in mind, how do you win at anything? You just have to stay in the game long enough.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's the resilience.
Yeah. So hustle culture means nothing to me. Like, what's hustle culture? If I can podcast for 30 years, I'll have a bigger podcast than most people on this planet. If I can find a way to clean toilets and turn that into a business, I'll probably have one of the biggest commercial cleaning companies that clean airplane toilets on earth.
Yeah.
None of that it's hard work, but it's not burning yourself out. It's not ruining your life. It's not working to the point where you pass out from exhaustion. It's not doing a routine that you hate. You're not less than if you decide to wake up early or if you want to stay up late, and whenever you work best, that all of it is fine. Just find what works for you and understand that staying in the game and balance and fulfillment are just as important as hard work.
I saw that from Gary Vee. I know a lot of people that are up 4 a.m. and he was just saying the other day that, to your point, it's just everybody, you have to self-aware.
Yeah.
You have to know yourself. Okay, so if I'm a late sleeper and I work best at night at 12 hours, so that's just you.
Yeah.
That's just your story. And the end of the day is work it backwards. The result to you. And this is where I feel the best and I'm getting my results. I'm not going out to the club partying every night. But I have my list of things, and I always like to do that, right? You have your short and long-term goals and your daily stuff that you got to do, and you write it down. I always find that that's always something, and you just tick it off.
People are too extreme. People are too extreme.
Yeah.
All of it. All of it is too extreme. Like, why is that the only option? You want to wake up early one day, go for it.
Yeah.
You want to have a drink on a Friday night? I don't mind.
Yeah.
Don't be extreme. Just enjoy life, and you'll figure it out.
So I want to ask you, Scott.
Yeah.
What's something, reflecting on 600 plus episodes that you've done, and your life where you are today, what's something that you're grateful for?
Oh, I'm grateful for my family, my health. I'm grateful for Gina. She's my better half. I'm grateful every single day. I'm grateful to be able to do the stuff that I do. And that's a hard idea some days because sometimes it's not so easy. But when you take a step back, and this is why I think having a good partner is actually one of the biggest hacks in entrepreneurship. When you take a step back, and she helps me do this real well, she helps me reframe my problems in the bigger context and helps me understand that the problems that I'm dealing with are not that big. And when you have somebody who gets you out of that stressful flight or fight response to the bad email or the bad call that you get, you realize how beautiful life is.
Yeah.
And you realize that, it's, again, cliches are quite often true, but the life that you're living now is something that your younger self could never even have dreamed about.
Always got to remember that where you came from, where you are, and where you're going.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And what would you say is the common denominator from all the guests that you've had on Success Story? What's the core of them, would you say?
The common denominator is self-belief. It's self-belief. Not all of them have balance. Not all of them live the healthiest lives. I think that's something that you should focus on, but the common denominator is self-belief. This idea first came, I mentioned I had Anthony Scaramucci on, and way too early, very nervous doing that interview. But I asked him a question along the lines of, what gives you the courage to wake up every single day and do what you do? And now he's a huge finance guy. He runs SALT conference, worth hundreds of millions. And he said, Scott, if I went back to Brooklyn with nothing but a T-shirt in my shitty studio apartment, no connections, no one knew my name, I could do this again and again every single time. And however you find a way to emulate that level of self-belief and agency, that's, I think, the secret. Because when you believe it, you'll figure out a way to do it. I think that a lot of people just sit in this imposter syndrome and they self-sabotage. And I'm not saying it's easy to get out of that. I have a couple ideas about how. I think one of them is just paying attention to all the successes that you've had as opposed to just focusing on the negatives and understanding how incredibly awesome you are if you've even made it this far. But find a way to architect and truly believe that you can figure it out, and that if someone else has figured it out, they're not that special, you can figure it out too. And that belief alone is enough for you to go through most obstacles.
I love that. I'll tell you something. Someone said something to me great along those lines. It's and kind of like a hack, a logistical hack. If you can train your mind everything to lose and nothing to lose at the exact same time.
I love that.
So there's nothing, right? I'll go back. I'll be homeless. It's okay. Whatever.
Figure it out.
Life still goes on. I'm breathing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right? So I want to say, Scott, thank you. This has really been great. How can people listen to your show and get in touch?
So if you like podcasts, it's called Success Story. You can find it anywhere, but if you want to find all the links, it's successstorypodcast.com. And then if you want to connect with me, it's pretty easy. It's at Scott D. Clary on all the socials.
Well, thank you so much, Scott.
No, my pleasure, dude. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
That was awesome.
Great. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Scott. If you haven't already, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribing ensures you never miss an episode and helps us continue to bring you meaningful conversations that make a difference. Thank you for being a part of our growing community. We couldn't do this without you. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.